Welcome to the Round 6 Podcast, a weekly roundtable discussion featuring a variety of automotive subjects, interviews, special guests, and stories, hosted by the Round 6 Gearheads, Brian Stupski, Brad King, Alex Welsh, and Eric Hibbs. On episode 12, the Gearheads hang out with hot rod builder and street machine legend Scott Sullivan. Night with us, huh?
Yeah, I know.
You hit rock bottom.
Yeah, like we talked about it. Late where I live.
Yeah.
Which all of you guys are out west, though, then.
Well, yeah, because this is where the action is, man.
Yeah,
Don't you know anything about hot rods?
that argument. Although I tell you what, I remember Pat Ganal telling me one time, you need to stay where you are. Because out here, you'll just blend in with everybody else. And in the Midwest, you're somebody different.
Well, the weird part is, though, man, like, starting in, like, what was it, early 2000s, everything kind of shifted out Midwest. Like, the real heavy focus of the magazines went that way. You had all those guys building cars in, like, Idaho and Nebraska.
I know.
Damn.
Well, and actually, I had, at SEMA this year, I had two separate builders. One builder said, what's it going to take for you to get me to come work for you? Or did I say that right? What's it going to take
I would go with that, yeah.
You to come work for me? And I said, and he lives in Alabama. And I was like, that'd be an awful lot. And he said, well, that's why I'm asking. I want a number. And builder number 2 was standing there, and he said, you're going to have to fight me for him. And he was, I don't know, Nebraska or somewhere equally as exciting.
If it's the two guys I think it is, I would love to see those two throw down and duke it out. Just, I mean, like one of those all-out. Can we bring weapons for both of them?
Yeah.
I know two guys out of Alabama. I'm trying to think of
It's got to be gladiator weapons, though. It's got to be something cool.
Gladiator.
Well,
Mink whips.
Better we make it so they have to fabricate their own weapons first. This is a TV show, man.
Oh,
that
is awesome.
You got 45 minutes to make a weapon and 15
No.
minutes
You get no
use it.
time limit. You have to make a fucking weapon. I mean, you get your... I'd be making the world's largest throwing star, a 4x8 sheet of plywood. 4x8 sheet of sheet metal.
It only has to be
a
a
piece of plywood.
Yeah, cut it in half, put an edge on it, and whip it.
Done. Where's that engraver when you need them?
Yeah.
Right there, the final episode of the season. They don't even have any they don't have any pre-time to make the weapon. It's just right there. While the battle's going on, you got to try to make your weapon.
As you defend yourself.
This will be great. Also, they throw in like bonus things like, oh, lucky day. Bob managed to get a hold of the chloroform rag. That buys him at least an extra 15 minutes.
They don't kill each other in the end. Oh, no, they kill each other in the beginning.
Yeah, it'd start that way.
In the beginning. It's just credits that roll for the next, hour and 13 minutes. But at the end of the hour and 13-minute credit roll, you got to watch the bonus scene. So you got to stick around for it.
Right.
Oh, fuck.
The director's diary is nothing but this old scrapbook of like penis drawings. Poorly constructed haikus.
So apparently you're directing it then, Brian. Is that what?
I'm putting my name out there.
Well, it's along with all the experience.
And I was wrong about the thunder. I told Brad that it's raining really, really hard here. It's a full-on thunderstorm.
Is that thunder? Is that what that noise was?
Yeah.
Holy
Damn.
crap.
Hey, Brad, you haven't experienced one of those yet.
No, I have not.
Yeah, I'm from Louisville, so yeah, I know where you're coming from, Scott.
Yeah,
I've been through some freaking boomers.
Alex, it sounded like you were making your sheet metal star there. You sound like you were flipping out a piece of 6x8.
getting a head start on us.
Hell yeah, I'm not telling you guys that my weapon is done. You fucking crazy. It's the element of surprise.
Well, we might as well make this kind of formal and put some kind of an intro here. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Brad.
I'm Alex.
I'm Eric.
Scott.
And hey, wow, this is great. We should have laid out the rules, but it's not a big deal. Hey, tonight with us, as you probably already know, because I'm not going to go back and edit this. It's too much fun as it is. We've got a guy with us who pretty much is like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of hot rodding. He found a way to kind of blend two very interesting things like street rods and street machines and really kind of turn the whole world on its head. Beyond that, you may know him from his wonderful covers of men's hairstyle magazines from 1978 through 87. Mr. Scott Sullivan, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. And don't forget all of my horticultural accomplishments as well.
Oh, that's right. I have a copy of it right here. Gardening Monthly has you listed. It's beautiful. It's you and is that a rhododendron? A rhododendron? I screwed that up.
I messed that old joke up.
I think it's pronounced azalea.
Oh. That's right. The R is silent.
Right. Exactly.
He made his own thing. It's got a blower on it. It's called a rhododendron. Okay, they can't all be zingers. Moving on. Man, thanks for joining us tonight. We've had,
No problem.
Definitely.
had a
This
blast
is more fun
already.
than I possibly could be having doing anything else.
That was sincere.
It was either do
At
the
least for $5
podcast or
an hour.
rearrange your sock drawer. Think about this.
Beat the cat.
Oh my god.
My cats are looking at me like that wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a euphemism for something else.
No, it wasn't. I know you did.
Beat the cat, can the pickle. I don't know.
So what do you guys do with guest stars then? You ask them questions and
Usually
stuff
we
like
dare
that?
them to eat things. What do you have in your pantry?
let me see.
Are there Tootsie Rolls in the litter box?
No,
Almond Roca. All right, what's in your couch
oatmeal.
cushions?
I don't use my couch for
Trail
anything.
mix. Trail mix.
Yeah, but the trail mix was developed over a period of time.
Sure,
You
absolutely.
didn't, you didn't just do it all in
No.
one
No,
sitting.
That way
You
I have
can't
more
buy that
protein.
stuff in stores.
Right.
So what we do with guests is we like to let them tell their stories, and we like to hear about the builds and what they're doing and how they got to where they're at, that sort of thing. It's
Oh my
casual.
goodness. Where am I?
Exactly.
This is where
So
you're at.
Growing up, are there any influences in that area that kind of got you hooked?
Yeah, I had, and it's interesting because my father was not even remotely interested in cars. And I had a cousin who was, but more importantly, there was a family that grew up down the street from me, the Yaley family. And all boys, what was it, 5 boys and 1 girl. The girl was the youngest, but the oldest boy, and I'm telling my age, but in 1960, he bought a new 60 Impala, and I was 5 years old. And I have memories of standing on the sidewalk and looking at that red 60 Impala with chrome reverse and baby moons on it and watching him wash it. I mean, I can remember that. And then he got shipped off to Vietnam. And so the next younger brother, I started hanging around down there. I mean, even from that age on, very young. And he kind of just took me under his wing. And I would go out and hang out in the garage with him. And he would teach me how to do things. He taught me how to paint. And this was a 1-car garage. We completely restored a '54 Corvette for a friend of his. Um, he had a '57 Ford Custom 300 with a 390 in it, a 4-speed. It had Astro Supremes on it, no bumpers, bar grill. One of his buddies had a '57 Fairlane, candy red, no bumpers. But I mean, 63 409 Impala. One of their buddies had. So those were the guys that I grew up with. Again, much younger, but I mean, they taught me everything. They took me to the drag strip every weekend.
Oh, that's cool.
And around here, gassers, modified production, and super stockers. Yep. And our local drag strip would have meats, that were modified production, gasser, super stock meats. And I've often joked throughout the years how many factory Mopar, the 65 Plymouth and Dodges, there were 50 of each or something like that, or 100 of each, I don't remember. And then the A100s, or what were they called? The super stock, the lightweight super stock.
The A990s?
Yeah. So you have those cars, and then you have the '68 Dart and Cudas. Yep. And there were a limited number of both of those cars. And I'd say that just about every one of them was at my drag strip because there were millions of them. I mean, shoot, there'd be the Daly family, Jerry and Ray Daly. I think they probably had 10 themselves. I mean,
all priceless today.
I know.
Yeah,
well,
just actually, regular cars back then.
Oh, they got beat on too.
Oh my God. Yeah, and actually, and I don't know that this was a factory lightweight car, but one of the guys stripped it to bare metal and left it out so that it would surface rust, so that it would lose weight.
The original rat rod.
Yep. That was called that.
Did he pee on it or something to make the...
No, they. I remember seeing it though at the drag strip and lettered with shoe polish, that rusty Dodge.
Wow!
Just
my God.
All bare metal. But that's there were so many. I mean, gassers and just crazy stuff. And then we had probably to this day. There were famous painters in the country. Circus comes to mind. Of course, Bill Carter out west. But there was a painter and a pinstriper that worked together from Covington, Kentucky. Bill Roll. Yep. And his nickname was Short Round. And Jim Parr, which was Dauber. And they lettered and painted just about every race car around here. Yep. And they were beyond amazing. Yep. And the only thing I have to tell you, and then you'll know, Bill Stepp's first '68 Cuda was painted by them.
No kidding.
Yeah. And number one that said wanted, it said Billy the Kid and it said wanted, and, Ghost behind it. But one of the most fantastic paint jobs I've ever seen on a race car. And they painted that car, and I know the story. I can't repeat the story, but they only painted the first car, and then different painters tried to copy that paint job throughout the remainder of all of the Billy the Kid race cars, and no one was successful. Yeah. they may have had the look, but they didn't have a paint job.
I remember growing up in Louisville. I remember some of Roll's lettering and paint jobs. He had the bitchinest flame jobs. I mean, his flame jobs are just killer.
Well, and what had happened was, you're correct. And then I'm not even gonna grace him with a name drop. Somebody basically started copying that. And actually, Bill Roll taught him, and now he's the flame doctor. Oh, it just blows my mind because I'm pretty good at it, and no one even thinks about that. You know what I mean? Everybody goes to the flame doctor.
That
Wait,
takes us
you-
back to our earlier conversation. I mean, so let's put this, if you had to rebrand yourself today as a painter, knowing there's already a flame doctor out there, what would you go with? Would you be like, the scallop scientist?
Run DMC.
See, I'm just gonna-
Sorry.
No, I'm thinking that you guys are. This is a fertile hotbed of ideas. So if I just keep my mouth shut, you're going to come up with something for me.
Oh,
We'll make
Brian's
one
got
for
all kinds of crap in his head. You probably don't want to hear too much more.
Well, I'd say the worst of it is I don't consider myself a painter to speak of. I consider myself more of a hot rod builder. But somebody's got to paint them, you know?
Well, you're thought of well enough that somebody flew you out to California to flame a car, right?
Yeah, and I've done that a number of times. But and I've done, over the years I've done a lot of that stuff. But I guess, I mean, there's a local guy that friended me on Facebook. He's in Cincinnati, and he does a lot of wheeler dealering, and he messaged me and I messaged him back, and basically said something like, "Hey, if you ever need anything, let me know," because he spends, get off the keyboard, cat. He spends a lot of money having stuff done, and his reply was, "Yeah, I think I might want this Merc I'm building painted flat color." Basically, it was back to referring to paint. And I answered him back and I said, "This is a full service shop. You can have anything done here you want." But he's in Cincinnati and he doesn't realize that. Most people don't.
Yeah.
So, and you ask about rebranding. Well, you're right. I've done something wrong in that people don't quite grasp, there's more goes on here than paint. In fact, generally, paint's not as much as, the fab stuff.
Right.
But what do you do? But at the same time, I mean, over the years, creating a painting style, a graphic style of my own, that just, I guess, furthers the myth or whatever that you're a painter.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever experience a time like that happened, like in the 80s and early 90s, where all the really cool graphics and things like that were coming out? You think we'll ever see that again? Or was that just one of those perfect windows of hot rodding that just some really neat creative stuff came out and a lot of creative people doing some really nice work? Do you think we'll ever see anything like that again?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Although, well, there'll be people trying to achieve that again
Mhm.
because they'll be, it goes around.
Sure.
But and again, that art style is just me. That is my art style, and I've had people say to me or see something and say, "Yeah, some of that 80s crap." And it crossed my mind. Here's the problem. And I guess I'm going to be so arrogant as to say it first. I'm the one that started that. I mean, and there are going to be people that will copy or emulate, however you want to say it.
Certainly.
Well, and that being said, there are copycat painters locally, a number of them, and there's only one good one. I mean, he actually has an eye for art, but everyone else just thinks, "Oh, you just throw a bunch of shit together," and to be honest with you, the general public, some people get it and some people don't.
Yeah.
So now you have an entire country copying or emulating whichever the style. Some people are good at it, some people aren't. But you have a flood of all of that, we'll call it crap, and there are a lot of people that just don't know the difference between one that was done well and one that wasn't. Yeah. So the basic the concept gets bastardized to the point that nobody wants to see any of it, even if it's good. You know what I mean? It gets worn out.
Yeah.
Because I still think that way when I'm actually doing a car right now for a customer that it's going to get art and it's going to get Scott art, and you can call it 80s art, whatever, but that's what it's going to get.
I remember when all that stuff was coming around and we didn't have social media, so we waited for weeks and weeks and weeks for the next issue to come out. And right. Back then, there's nothing against the guys doing magazines right now. Maybe it's just me, but back then I was a lot more excited whenever I would pick up one of the big name magazines. And to me, the content in it was exactly what I wanted to see. It was a lot of regular guys like us, didn't have the money to go and buy things out of a catalog, went digging through junkyards and digging through junk piles and customizing and making small pieces to work, for our stuff. And it was just done right. I mean, it was just done to a high level of detail. You don't need a lot of money to have nice detail. That's time. And I just miss that time. That era was just a lot of fun. I mean, we could pick up these magazines, you'd look through them, and there'd always be something cool in there.
Well, and I remember packing all caddy hack, cutting up the Cadillac.
Right.
Stuff like that was fun. I mean, just because, it was outrageous, but I mean, and all they're really doing is proving the point. But you're right. You can talk about and I know you guys have talked about, let's just jump into the $2 million car builds.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you relate to that? Because for me, the first time that I consciously had an opinion, was looking at a Riddler winner, and I thought, that just looks like a concept car to me.
Yeah.
I mean, when there's no expense spared, everything can be made. But at the same time, you can't, and we've all done it. We've all bashed that sort of thing. But you can't wish for it to not exist.
Sure.
Right.
Because it has its place, and it. But at the same time, you're right, and I still go to junkyards and look for stuff.
Absolutely. I think that's a key element in hot rodding. I mean, it's that's what hot rodding was based on. Going through that wrecking yard with an open mind. Thinking about, okay, I'm looking for a switch, and you look through 80 cars. Until you find that one switch that works, you get it home, and just like me and all of the rest of us, we probably got a bigger stash of stuff that didn't work than the stuff that did work.
Absolutely.
But man, we got some stuff. You want to come over? I got switches. I got, knobs. I got levers. I got everything. I like the stuff where you've utilized factory stuff, but you've done it real subtly, and it's all painted all nice and slick and almost looks factory, where somebody looks at it, they just can't figure out, well, shit, my Chevelle doesn't have that. Well, it doesn't. It's got all factory pieces. It looks factory, and this guy's tilting his head like a dog, and he can't figure out what is the difference.
Well, I'll be curious.
That's when you've done it right.
I'll be curious to see how many people look at the dash from my 54 and realize that a 54 dash doesn't look like that, but it looks factory.
But what's cool about that is that 99 people will walk right by, but the one guy that gets it, it's worth every bit of the time. Every bit of the time that you did, it's worth it because somebody got it.
Yep. And actually, you're talking about going through, and this is hilarious, my glove box door button, or I guess again, button.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Exactly. Anyway, they have a key slot in them. You know, and all of those buttons are as early as 1950 and up to, I couldn't even tell you, maybe 65. They're all identical. A glove box for a GM.
Gotta love GM.
That assembly, and the button with the key in it. And I didn't want the keyhole slot in my glove box door button. So I tried to TIG weld that stainless shut.
Ooh.
And that's your TIG welding the pop can.
Yeah.
And I was doing okay at doing that, but what I didn't know was that was a stainless, stamped out piece that covered over pop metal button. So I'm trying to TIG weld it shut, and I'm melting the pop metal underneath.
Oh shit!
But I was determined I had to have a button with no hole, with no slot in it. So I went to our local junkyard, and I got about, I don't know, 12 or 13 of those.
All different ones?
No, they're all the same.
You figured one of them's going to weld shut.
One from a Honda.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to get this right sooner or later. And I tell you what, I think I destroyed almost every one before I finally got the idea to take it apart, grind down the pop metal to where it was only the size, the diameter of a pencil. And then I took a piece of 1/2-inch stainless tubing and capped it and shoved it over the pencil thingy sticking out. And I've got a button with no slot in it.
Wow.
And how many hours?
Oh my God. Who knows? But I mean, I get obsessed with stuff like that, and it's like, I got to make this work.
We're all like that.
Yeah, but I mean, and you're absolutely right. There will be a lot of people that won't, when they look at my dash, they won't realize, unless it's somebody that owns a 54 or has owned one, you know, and then they'll be like, but what's done to this exactly?
Yeah.
But the biggest
Well, I
thing
will
is
tell
it doesn't have vents, all, you know, or those speaker grill looking all the way across.
Right.
You know, my glove box door isn't. It's basically just got a speaker grill in it. That's all.
If our 11 listeners all get together and see this car at the same time, there will be 11 people. Well, 10 because one's blind. They'll all appreciate it.
Okay,
Let to get
Brian's
his
two
fingerprints off the dash when he's done.
Hopefully they'll all see it at the same time and rejoice.
Well, they are all in the same choir, so it's going to be delightful.
There you go.
Jubilant.
Mhm.
Ooh, nice word. Alex is using the thesaurus.
That's right.
Okay, I gotta ask about the car that kind of got the whole thing rolling with me. It was the Nova, dude. You built the Nova, and I remember I was a kid going, "Holy crap, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Mhm.
How old were you when you built that thing?
22.
Man, yeah. Well, I must thank you for that, because that was pretty over the top at the time.
Well, you know, and that's another deal that people, man, just post a picture of that on Facebook and say that it was the first pro street car. Oh my God, people go off. Why? My cousin had one 5 years before that. And the other thing about that is, we're not talking about tub cars. We're talking about pro street car. And I tell everybody, and it doesn't matter how many times you say it, how many times it's on Facebook, how many social media, because people are still going to do it. And it's actually kind of a funny joke to me where you want to start a fight, you know, bring up Trump or bring up pro street car, you know, and same thing. You're just going to get people going on and on and on. But I have the issue, October 79, Popular Hot Rodding Magazine, probably written, I need to go back and look. The text was probably written by Steve Reyes, the photographer.
Right.
Because he's the one that did the photography. But anyway, it says, we see a trend developing in the pro street world, or in the hot rodding world, that we're going to call pro street. And that's not verbatim, but that's basically what the article says.
But yeah, that's funny you mentioned that issue. I was so happened to me. I had my first job. I was working in a grocery store, and the guy came and loaded up the magazine rack, and there it was. There was the car. It's like, holy shit! I picked the thing up, and start reading it. Well, my boss walks by the aisle, gives me a dirty look. I put the thing back. I kept going back all night long to that aisle. That aisle was probably the cleanest, most swept aisle in the entire store because I kept running the sweeper through it. Finally, he goes, "You pick up that magazine one more time, I'm going to fire you." And he was serious. And so I wound up, I didn't have any money in my pocket. I was a high school kid. So I wind up, next day I made sure I brought, I think it was $1.85 or whatever those things cost back then. And I bought the magazine. Right. But that car flipped me out because there was nothing like it. It was a unique color. I mean, it was a pretty color. But what really got me, I think, was the painted bumpers. On a 66 and 67 Nova, the bumpers are such a styling feature on the car because it mimics the front fender shapes and the rear shape. And just painting them kind of ties the whole left and right sides of the car together. And I just thought that was such a slick idea. And after that, I've always been a painted bumper guy. That was the first one I saw with painted bumpers. And I've always been a fan of painted bumpers on the right car.
I was going to say, off topic for just a second, there was a picture of my 55 on Facebook, and somebody who didn't know what it was said, "Lose the bumpers."
Peasants.
I would love to see you put a brand new set of wheels on that car and just turn it loose at some shows that you normally don't go to. And
so people think it's a new car.
I wouldn't, that to me so funny though that thing stands the test of time. But back to the Nova real quick.
Right.
That Nova, you think about that. You inspired basically an entire movement.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, what's even funnier is you went back and you redefined it.
Right.
So I can't think of too many things where somebody's done that. I mean, you might have had that in the custom world where maybe somebody started off, Barris started off with a certain style car, and then they kind of redefined it with these weird kind of, back to the whole concept car looking thing.
But that was all out of necessity.
Exactly.
The redefining in particular was, and again, I've told this story enough. It's one of those things that I probably shouldn't say because it makes me sound like an arrogant asshole. But
I will testify for you and say you're not.
Oh, okay. That's cool. How much good is that going to do me?
Nobody listens to
Eric,
Brian anyway.
He's got more clout.
Right. But anyway, I said very specifically, after seeing the way that Road Street was going, I mean, it was, to me, it was silly.
Yeah.
First of all, you guys, I don't know why my cat is acting the way she is, because she never acts. She can't stand the fact that I'm talking. My God, cat. But anyway, after seeing the way things were going, and the manufacturers were giving all of those guys brand new cars, and there was a part of me that was jealous because nobody would give me a new car. Not that I asked, but nobody called me up and said they were going to give me a new car to cut up. And then there was another common sense part of me that learned that those new cars didn't have titles. Yeah. You couldn't sell them. Yeah. You couldn't license them. What on earth good were they to me? But at the same time, I was envious over the fact that manufacturers were giving people new cars. So I said very specifically, I'm going to build an old car. It's going to be a single 4-barrel. I'm going to drive it to the event, and I'm going to spank every one of those guys. And that's what I did.
Awesome.
That was the reason, that the 55 ended up the way it did, which I don't know. I guess that's not really true, but it makes for a good story. But back to the Nova, I or to tub cars first. In 1974, late 74, early 75, I had a 1971 Dodge Demon. I did not have a garage. and I had that car in my driveway, jacked up, jack stands, the rear end out of it, trying to figure out how to put 1432 tires under it. And frankly, I wasn't smart enough. I didn't know, and Mopar even had springing board kits and all that stuff. I mean, I was 19, so I didn't know what I was doing, but I did end up with that car with a Dana rear end, with a 10-inch Prager that looked like a 7. It was all the back spacing to the inside, and a Firestone slick that was called 11531W, and it measured 13 1/4 inches wide, crammed in the wheel wells of that car.
Not mini tubbed.
Correct.
That's rad.
And Prager Super Tricks in front, and the absolute first snorkel scoop that anyone ever saw on a street car. And that was my daily driver.
That's rad.
513 rear end.
It was my daily driver. We only drove
my
about
daily
3
driver.
blocks.
Work was just down the block.
But anyway, so in 1976, and actually that's another situation because I didn't have a welder. I didn't know how to weld, and I bought a local race car that a local guy had tubbed. But that car, my Nova, actually was leaf springs and a 4-link both. And the leaf springs were basically, they just held the weight of the car. So the leaf springs floated. There were spacers so that the rear end housing floated on the springs. You know what I mean? So that it didn't bolt tight. And then the rear, there was no shackle. It was a slider. And that's how the suspension was made to work.
That's pretty cool.
And then it had stock wheel tubs moved over, which if you remember on a Nova, one side, the gas filler, so they didn't match. So I cut all that stuff out, and somehow or another, I don't even remember, some fiberglass sheeting, and I built wheel tubs for it out of fiberglass. There's still fiberglass wheel tubs in it. And then my neighbor down the street that I told you raised me and taught me everything, he cut out the shock towers for me to put a big block in it.
Wow.
And I built that car. At the time that, see how many of you guys know all this stuff, Pat Crafton and Rat Pack.
Yep.
Remember those?
This is cool.
Yeah. He had a Chevelle, right?
Yep. Pat bought a new LS6 70 Chevelle, and man, he started hacking on that thing immediately. It was before I met him. We would go to, I remember going to our local Frisch's, that's the thing to do, even here, on Friday, Saturday night. And I remember seeing the 70 Chevelle, white with a black front end, black hood, black fenders, fiberglass bumpers, and I can't remember whether it had a Hillborn scoop on the tunnel ramp, but, and Krager Super Tricks, unpolished Super Tricks and slicks on it. I mean, this was the most outrageous street car you've ever seen for the time. And I met Pat sometime after that, and we hung out together, and then he started the whole Rat Pack deal. And so we started to, and I had just built my garage at that time. So there was a 70 Chevelle that I had done, and then a 69 Camaro that I had done, and then a buddy of mine had a 70 Nova with a big block in it. So we put Rat Pack on all of our cars. And my blue Nova, I painted candy red, and it had a single 4-barrel and an L88 scoop on it, and it said Rat Pack on it. And I didn't finish my car because I finished my buddy's cars to go to the 78 Street Machine Nationals. And so the candy red version of my Nova never got seen. But after going to the Nationals that year, I came back and decided I had to have a supercharger. And so I completely redid the car, put a blown big block in it, painted it blue pearl. The bumpers were painted both times. But I had to distance myself from the Rat Pack because people were thinking that Pat painted the cars that I had painted. And I was trying to make a name for myself, and it's like, well, that's not really working. So I kind of just stepped away from the whole Rat Pack thing, let them guys do that on their own, and then built the Nova. But one other thing about the Nova, the Super Sport emblem on the back, I had made fiberglass bumpers and hood and trunk for it, and had a factory Super Sport emblem on the trunk lid. And I put it all together, and once it was a lift-off trunk lid. When you lift it off, it weighed 10 million pounds on one side. Then I thought, that's not going to work. So I took it off, and fiberglass, the indentation, made it all smooth, and I painted it on. So that's kind of how that came about.
Way cool.
Too cool.
So where's that car at now?
A guy named Ron Iannotti bought it from me in 1984, and he still got it.
Wow.
And the last time I saw it was, I want to say it was 95. And it actually gave me a chill because it was absolutely exactly like I had left it.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't know how to weld. My gas door on the quarter panel was leaded on. I tinned the quarter panel, tinned a piece of sheet metal, and stuck them together, and then leaded over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that car was not a Super Sport, so it had all of the trim holes down the sides. Yeah. I put these things that you would I got from the paint store. They're called lead plugs, and you soldered them in. And then my cowl vents, I chopped them all up with a jigsaw, beat them in with a hammer, and then fiberglassed over my cowl vents. So after the car was done, there was an ever slight ghosting of the cowl vents. Quite a few of the lead plugs in the sides had they swelled in the paint. And when I saw the car again, none of that stuff had gotten any worse. I mean, it was, the quarter panel with the gas door, you couldn't tell it. I mean, it was perfect. So it was basically just like stepping into a time warp. And when I saw the car the next time, it was identical to when I had sold it. And
does he ever take it out? Does he ever?
He does, but he takes it to he'll take it to shows in New England.
Oh, okay.
There, but he got into drag racing big time, and actually, if you ever saw the West Coast Choppers Willys, that was Ronnie. They had West Coast Choppers on their race cars, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, cool.
But Ronnie also owns another famous car from that period, a 32 three-window with a blown Hemi in it, and everything is louvered.
Oh, it's a yellow car, right?
It was yellow.
Yeah.
And Ronnie took it apart, and they painted it black, and they put a red interior in it.
Could you imagine color sanding that car?
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
I've said I will never
try to color sand a cheese grater.
My brown Cheez had 310 louvers in the hood. It was not any fun.
I swore I would never have another louvered hood until I could pay somebody else to sand those damn louvers.
Yeah.
I just no.
Yeah, this was lacquer too.
Ugh. Yeah, I sanded for weeks.
Right.
Well, then you got to hand finish it too. You can't really run a buffer and you'll burn every edge.
Exactly.
Yep.
But again, with lacquer, I mean, at least you could do that.
Yeah.
You can do it with your thing, but it's just a little more difficult.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about the 55.
Let's bridge the gap somehow then. What if we say from the Nova to the 55? If you had to do an abridged version, How do you make the transition from that car, from the Blue Nova into the Cheez Whiz 55?
Pro Street was going crazy. It was a matter of how many superchargers could you have, and so I just, at the same time, I had already been out to California and seen Boyd doing brushed wheels and stuff. And frankly, it's like, oh, that's brushed, but it ain't brushed enough. But I got the idea to brush all of the trim on the 55, including the wheels and the trim, and have a grill made. But yeah, that's how I went from A to B. I guess there are a number of different 55 stories now. I mean, and it's funny, 30 years old, and I can tell stories forever and ever about that car. I'd always wanted a 55 Chevy, and much like I guess you would call a 41 Willys today, they're always just right out of your price range. It's like no matter, there's always a car that you always wanted, and as you go on in life and do better, you have a little more money, but those cars are a little more expensive, and you're never going to own one. And that's what I thought the 55 was going to be, or a 55. But and this is also another stereotype story. Some kid, 16-year-old kid owned it. His brother built it, and his brother died in Vietnam and left it to him. And I had seen it around town and talked to the kid about it, but I mean, it wasn't for sale. It was a family heirloom or whatever.
Right.
Well, sometime or another, that kid called me and told me that he wanted to sell it. And I went to look at it, and it didn't run, and the brakes were bad. And I said, "What do you want for it?" He said, "Well, how much you give me for it?" And I said, "Well, I'll give you $2,000 for it." I said, "But I'd rather give you $1,800 for it." And he said, "I can't take that." And I said, "Okay, thanks, see you, bye." So anyway, he called me back, and I ended up buying the car, and I brought it home, and I jacked it up to do the brake job, and I start looking underneath it and realized I don't see any rust. And I had no idea. I mean, when I bought it, I figured I was buying a $2,000 55 Chevy. That's all I cared about. I didn't care what kind of shape it was in. I had a 55 Chevy. And I started looking and realized this car is absolutely rust-free. I mean, it's perfect. And so I made a set of rally wheels for it, some 50x4 and 50x8s, and painted them 70 Maverick turquoise, and it had a press pleat black interior in it. And I drove it that way for about 2 weeks. And then my buddy Roger, who owned the black 57 originally, he said, "Man, let's tub that thing." And I said, "Okay." So pulled it in his garage, and we narrowed the rear end and stock Lee springs, and took the center lines off my girlfriend Chevelle and put them on it. And so it was turquoise with brushed center lines on it. And I just started, that was my daily driver. And then something happened, and my girlfriend, that ended up being her daily driver. And she drove that car for a year. Drove it to work, tubbed, 55 Chevy. And
my wife did the same thing to me with a 27 Roadster.
Really?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was learning already. Front wheels stick out too far for me. You can only get one so low. I want one lower. And so I'm learning about this whole subframe thing. So in 1980, well, it was the same year I bought it, I guess, or maybe 81. I think it's about 81. I cut the frame off and put a 69 Camaro clip on it, and mocked it all up and put it all back together, and wasn't happy with how low it was, so I Z'd the frame and got it sitting where I wanted. And I made a core support, but I couldn't figure out what my inner wheel wells were supposed to look like. I just couldn't envision in my head. So I paid a local race car builder to build me a set of wheel wells. It was $300. And
Jeez.
after I had him do that, then I learned exactly what I didn't want. But the good news was I had perfect templates. So I literally took them out. He made them out of aluminum, which I told him to make them out of steel. But anyway, and just stomped them flat and used them for templates to make my wheel wells.
Oh, how funny.
So I went ahead, yeah, but it's a learning experience. But anyway, I ended up making wheel wells for it. And then that car sat until about 1987. And then I started working on it again. It was after my trip to California in the Nova. And I had so much fun in that Nova in California. You know, having your hot rod, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
every hot rod shop that I went to, people were freaking out over the car. I'm like, this is just my daily driver. You know, what do you see if I really build something? But anyway, so I had decided I wanted to drive the 55 to California when it was done. And so originally the car was going to be a TPI motor, 700R, power steering, power brakes, air conditioning. And sometime I realized with the Camaro subframe, the steering gearbox was on the backside of the cross member, and you couldn't have a power steering gearbox. There wasn't enough room between it and the firewall. And I thought, okay, if I can't have power steering, that changes everything. This is going to be a race car now. So I went and bought a new LS6 from Chevrolet. And then Jeff Smith was really good friends with John Lingenfelder. And Jeff Smith had called me one time and said, are you still going to drive your 55 to California when you're done? And I said, I don't know, maybe. And he said, well, how about if I fly to Ohio, I drive with you, we do a story on the trip, and Hot Rod pays for everything. I said, I'm in.
Yeah.
Twist my arm a little.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
So because Jeff was friends with John Lingenfelder, I called John Lingenfelder, and I said, I got a brand new LS6 454. I need a big camshaft that'll work on the street. And what else? What kind of intake should I use? And when that phone conversation was over, I was taking my brand new LS6 to John Lingenfelder and throwing away just about every internal piece to the motor.
Oh, jeez.
And it ended up scat crank, 496 cubic inches, bigger exhaust valves, of course, comp cams roller, and the whole Wiseco pistons, the whole deal. But it was 640 horsepower on the dyno.
Those were huge numbers for the time.
Yeah, and when you heard it, I mean, oh my God, it's freaking pro stocker. And John said he put a circle track roller in it, but he gave them the dimensions for the lift and duration. They ground the cam for him, but he said it was a circle track roller. And so then Jeff flew here. We jumped in it and started on our adventure. When I bet we were 5 miles on the freeway, and I looked at Jeff and I said, let me tell you something. No matter what happens, you're with the luckiest guy you've ever met in your life. By golly, I proved that time and time again going out on our trip. But probably the funniest one in particular was we had gone to Bonneville just because I wanted to see Bonneville. I mean, I didn't, we missed races by a week, but I just wanted to see Bonneville. And so we went up there, and then when we left Bonneville, we just started going on country roads. And we stopped to get gas at this general store, 2 old gas pumps out front. And it wasn't even paved. And we pulled into the parking lot, pulled up to the gas pump, and there's a guy standing there with bib overalls on the screen door, and he goes,
Was he playing the banjo?
"No," thing. But he didn't have a shirt on. But anyway, and I think his nipples were red. He said,
He's a car
said,
guy. Okay.
"Yeah," he said, "y'all got a flat." And I got out and looked at my passenger side. Tire was down. And I looked again, and I said, "That's not a flat, that's a cracked wheel." One of my motor wheels cracked, or my motor wheel copies. So I look at Jeff, and we're like, now what do we do? I mean, we are so in the middle of nowhere, you cannot imagine. Within 60 seconds, a guy comes pulling in behind my car in a Jeep. He jumps out and he goes, "Cool car." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I like it better when all the wheels are round." And he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I got a broken wheel." And he walked over and he looked at it and he goes, "My father-in-law could weld that." And I said, "Oh, yeah." I'm looking at him like, "Oh, yeah, buddy." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Did your father-in-law have a TIG welder?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, yeah. Can he weld aluminum?" And he goes, "See all those sprinklers over there in that field?" And I said, "Yeah, big, giant irrigation sprinklers." He goes, "He built all those." I looked at him and I go, "Exactly where is your father-in-law?" He says, "Right behind the general store."
Oh, nice.
I looked at Jeff and said, "I told you."
Holy moly. Speaking of the car, I got to ask you, you and I talked about this at one point, kind of tying this together with, we had done a little talk about Street Machine of the Year and where that's all headed, and with your 54 coming out. You had told a great story about when the Cheez Whiz car was...
I was going to say, we just don't have to talk about the year.
Let's go that way. Yeah, let's not even talk. Let's just say, yeah, the car had a few miles under it.
Yeah, quite a few.
And you had decided to...
I'd driven up to I think I can pull this off. I had driven up to the Good Guys, because one of my philosophies also is, if I took that car out, just religiously year after year, blah, 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 good guys, people would be like, yeah, whatever, that orange car. So my idea was more to just bring it out occasionally. And this was one of those occasions. I took it to the Good Guys in Columbus. And in typical Scott fashion, I showed up in Columbus around 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. And you're not going to find a place to park, period. I, honest to God, drove around in the event for an hour trying to find somewhere to land. And finally got frustrated and drove over behind a service building next to a dumpster and turned the car off.
I thought you parked next to me that year.
Yeah. Was that your dumpster?
Well, he called it home, but
No,
one man's dumpster is another man's home. So
that was my car, pal, but whatever. Anyway, as soon as I turned the car off, they announced on the PA, if anyone's interested in entering the Street Machine of the Year competition, we have some openings. And I looked at whomever had ridden up there with me and said, "That sounds like better parking than here." So I started the car up and I drove over to the Street Machine competition. I lifted the yellow tape. I pulled my car in. I turned it off. We got out and walked around to the event about 5 or 6 hours. Came back to the car, jumped in it, started it up, lifted the yellow tape, pulled the car out, and proceeded to go home. Well, while we were on the entrance ramp, which you can see from the event, driving up the ramp to get on the I-70, they announced, "Scott Sullivan, we don't know where you went with your car, but please come back to the Street Machine of the Year competition." Well, I didn't hear it, so I drove home. And so the following week, I got a phone call from the editor of the Good Guys, and he said, "Where'd you go Saturday?" I said, "I went home." And he said, "Well, you won an award. And I said, you know what? I said, this car is, so many years old. It's won every award it could possibly win. And to be honest with you, I would much rather somebody else win it and make their day as opposed to, same old car, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I didn't want to tell you this, but he said, since you backed out, we chose this black 57 Nomad with the flames on it. And I said, cool, I flamed it. And I said, and that guy worked his ass off. 9 years that guy took to build that car. And I said, so I couldn't be happier. And he said, well, I didn't want to tell you, but you won Street Machine of the Year. And I said, okay, the fact that the people who did win it won it, I'm happy for them. At the same time, it was very frustrating because I think it was only $1,000, but man, I could have used $1,000 then. But yeah, supposedly I won Street Machine of the Year once.
I think $1,000 would have paid for gas one way.
Uh-huh.
And that's such a cool story because, like I said, without going into details, I mean, you wind up parking in that area for judging simply because you had a really shitty parking spot to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
You take the biggest prize, which now that's like one of the marquee prize. That's the marquee trophy out there.
Right.
And it's so funny because inadvertently, with the car that won, it kind of ushered in a whole new trend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know you guys have touched on this, but the Street Machine of the Year is unattainable now, in my opinion. I mean, I'm going to take my car up there and enter it. I've kind of been told they won't even let me, which doesn't make sense. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. The rules clearly state. I mean, get on the internet. It says 1954 and up. But I know somebody that entered a 55, and they said, "Well, we feel that this is more of a custom rod of the year." Really? What determines that? Yeah, I don't understand it. But it's going to be the same situation. And somebody had told me, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I just learned this. Somebody said, Good Guys Columbus is going to be an absolute disaster this year. I said, no, why?
Really?
They said 1987 on down. Yeah, that show is already packed beyond packed. Now it's going to be just, how are you going to do anything?
Full of late models.
Correct.
And nothing against that. I mean, that was a big thing, especially if you go back to like the heyday that I think we all really enjoyed. You had like late 80s, early 90s, so you had all the AMG style G bodies and stuff like that. But now, I mean, holy cow, it's tough enough like out here at the Southwest Nationals. There's no room on Saturday.
Well, exactly. If they could accommodate and not make it miserable, more power to them. But it's like I said, you can't go on Saturday morning and find a place to park at all. I mean, if you want anyone to see your car, there's no way. So
and this is kind of one of the things we had touched on too, where if you have an event that is that packed, it just becomes a pull in, park your car, and that's it. Like the old days, like if you have a show like Good Guys in Pleasanton, or even going back to like the days in Canfield and things like that, Canfield or Du Quoin, you had places where you could cruise your car around.
Absolutely.
You could pull your car out, drive, park someplace else, check out the cars there, head on back to where your little campsite was, whatever. I think those days are over.
Right. You could do that on Friday mornings in Columbus, but Saturday, no way.
For 9 till 9:16 a.m.
Exactly.
They have the open cruising.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and put the 54 in the competition, most for a place to park. But the other thing is,
I was gonna angle the dumpster this year for you. When you get there, just push it over to the side; it'll be fine.
You haven't repainted it or anything, have you? Still yellow?
No, I kept it yellow. I don't want to change things up. And don't worry if you get a handprint on it this time. No worries.
But I don't know. There's also a big part of me that wants to park my car next to cars that were built by build teams.
See, and when we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, that's what we want to see. We want to see the
Right.
cars that are built in a two-car garage, at somebody's home by, a talented guy and friends, and go and just knock the socks off of everybody. That's what we want.
I know, but again, you're never. We can't go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these $1 million cars are going to be built, and the only thing about it is, I guess, if you want to actually whine about it, probably the way to do it is uh, the street machine competition has been overtaken. They need a new award, not for the street machine. They need a new award for the professionally built. But I don't know how you categorize that. The $200,000 up club.
The cubic dollar award.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
Mortgage Squared Club. I
right.
get in places.
But I mean, because again, and I've said this now. I guess I have a chip on my shoulder because my 54 between uh, the crash and the rebuild and et cetera, et cetera. It's not perfect. I mean, it's badass, but it's not perfect. And knowing that the Street Machine of the Year competition is based on uh, style, blah, 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 fit and finish, well, I'm already screwed. But that being said, and I mean, and this is, I wish I could prove the Street Machine of the Year they actually would tell you this isn't a car show. We don't care if something's chipped or blah, blah, blah. It's just got to be a badass street machine. So when did that turn into Riddler style judging?
Do you want me to come out and say it?
Go ahead.
I really think it became that way when it came down to selling ad space.
You're right.
Just to back up what I said, I'm not trying to say that a car wins because somebody bought 4 full page ads in whatever magazine. What I'm trying to say though is it's become a whole different world now where the companies that are putting 4 full page ads in a magazine are fronting the money to put the parts into a car that costs $2 million.
Right.
And you've got companies that take that money and those parts and put them into these $2+ million cars, which rolls over then into having a show where you have a handful of $2+ million cars.
Right.
Right.
And they have to reward it in order to self-perpetuate.
Right.
So we're caught in that weird cycle where a guy like you who builds what is effectively, in any real hot rodder's mind, the epitome of what a street machine is. It's not perfect, but it's badass.
Right.
And your car is inspirational, I think, tenfold to me. And believe me, I've gotten to work on and design cars that have cost millions of dollars.
Right.
But yours speaks to my heart. I think those days, as sad as it is, are gone. And we're at that spot, though, where you really can't say, here is our $2 million pavilion. You can't ever go park in the country club, and they'll have like a cool, like a wine and cheese tasting festival and something else for all those guys. And maybe
You can't
can
get in
have
unless you,
Silly
you can't get in
hats
unless you speak
competition.
French.
What the hell is a concours anyway?
Yeah. That ain't something you eat, is it? I'm probably allergic.
But yeah,
Anyway,
I mean,
yeah. But like I said, I do want to enter, but if they don't let me enter, then I'm going to be in the ride tech booth
awesome.
because that's my version of because I guess I don't know. I just blatantly say I want people to see my damn car, especially after all it's been through. I mean, I don't. And actually, frankly, there are a lot of people that are waiting to see it.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I've had a number of people say, "Please, please finish that car so that the rest of the world starts getting back to reality. You know, they're looking for me to be the impetus for, you know, the entire planet to straighten themselves out. It's like, well, you
It's
know what?
all on you.
Yeah, that
They want
worked
you to
on-
set the bar again.
Well, because of the 55, and I mean, and
Right.
the 55 did do well, but it's too late for that. There's going to be a handful of people that like my 54. I can just name them. There's about 8, and then we're done. You know.
Oh, it'll be a whole lot more than 8, eh? Because
Yeah,
it's
Plus
going.
our 11 listeners.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But it's not going to look like the same car that's in contention for what you're trying to do.
No,
here.
it doesn't. Yeah.
They're all going to look the same, and there's going to be this thing that's rattling windows, and it's like, all right, well, that's way different.
Exactly. And I really hope that they give you the chance, because I just want to see your 54 cruise around the autocross.
Oh, hell
Yeah,
yes.
I wish I had. I wish I was more objective as far as how I think that's going to do, but that's all it's going to do is cruise around. I'm not. It's too early for me to raise hell. And actually, you know, my idea was always to make 2 quiet laps and to do a giant burnout afterward. But I can't. It's, man. I mean, I'm a month away and I still can't drive it. I mean, I've driven it, but I mean, we actually, I messed with my power steering, and then the car got hard to start. I don't quite understand how the power steering enters into that, but anyway, come to find out my computer needed updated. So we updated the computer, and now the car won't run at all. And it's just our lack of experience. I mean, we'll get it worked out, but TikTok, I'm running out of time. And, you know, to go up there and raise hell, well, that's not really safe. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to kill anybody. So,
Well, what if you just do it differently? What if you load that car up with like 5 or 6 girls in bikinis?
and drove around?
Just drive around nice and slow, take them for a cruise.
Well, you know I'm from Ohio, right?
Does that mean you're going to load it up with guys
So,
in bikinis?
and I'm trying to be careful here because I'm so tempted and knee jerk. It's a little. We're in a corn-fed part of the country, so 5 or 6 are probably out.
Okay, so
Probably. You do the
Well,
same
you already
thing.
you already know it's Street Machine of the Year, right? Street Machine of the
Yeah.
Year. You got to show up like everybody else. It's got to be in a trailer.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be fun. Like I said, I just I hope I can get it all running and driving well and go up and park next to a bunch of expensive cars. Because honestly, I mean, and you know, it's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. I like my car. I mean, and I like that it is, at least in my eyes, badass. Most of the other cars there that I'm aware of, I don't care how much they cost or how flawless they are. They don't do much for me. And
They all start looking a lot alike.
yeah, they do.
It's like everybody runs the same recipe book.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I posted a picture of the 54 on Instagram with the interior when I got it back from Larry, and said that no cows were harmed during the making of this interior.
No carbon fiber either.
Yeah, exactly.
The wood trim on the seats, is that just all airbrushed in?
Yeah, I knew, and the 54 is a lot like the Henry J, which I guess when I think about it's like every damn thing. But for some reason or another, when I think about a vehicle, I know every square inch of what I want, every square inch, and I knew that my interior, I describe it as 30s Duesenberg or Rolls Royce.
Right.
I wanted that interior to look like one of those, like an old car. I guess is just the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted burlwood in it. And now with all of this water hydro dipping, you can have flawless burlwood. And as cool as that is, you got to be able to dip it. And I absolutely was not willing to cut the dash out. So I thought, well, I guess I got to paint this, and it has to be good. And I've never done it before. So
Well,
I
you know
just,
that there's somebody out there who's going to take credit for it. So
sure. So I really don't have to worry.
Yeah, Burl Ives.
No, but I'd spin around with that just a little
Oh,
bit.
jeez.
I
Oh,
fiddled
man.
around with it just a little bit, and it wasn't that difficult to do. And so probably the coolest thing I did though is the seat, the front seat, like they're on the seat backs and the seat bases. There are sheet metal pieces on a 55 Ford that are upholstered, and I filled all the holes and bodyworked and painted them, and then painted them to look like wood. Basically, I just rearranged where normal people would paint wood. My window frames are not painted like wood.
but your carpet is, so that's kind of interesting. I like the way that looks.
Well, how do you compete with somebody that has a painted interior? And the funniest thing is, the 54 has every suspension component, pretty much, that most of those cars have. All Pro Touring stuff. I mean, it's got a Rytec 4-link in back. It's got tall spindles. It's got coilovers at all four corners. Giant sway bar in front. But I just got spindly front wheels and giant back wheels. So I kind of shot myself in the foot right away. I should have put them hoopies on there and O-rings and play with the big boys.
Well, just stagger them. Move the left rear to the right front.
I don't know. It's just not my style. I don't like 19 by 11 front wheels.
Mhm.
Put them in the back or something.
Rear
I don't
tires
like.
with a half-inch of sidewall.
Yeah, exactly. I was just getting ready to say, I don't like O-rings,
Ugh.
and frankly, that's an opinion that has grown, because at first, well, it's the latest trend, blah blah blah, and then I wrote in something with like that, and I was like, okay, this sucks. I don't want anything that you can feel every pebble in the road. But as time has gone on, more and more and more, I hate those square tires on old cars. I don't like that look.
That's so funny. That's just, I mean, what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. That's right in line.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, we thanks for vindicating that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's just something about it. I mean, sidewall is good. I don't know where people
Absolutely.
lost track of that.
In the road.
Well, tire manufacturers, new cars. I don't know. And again, there's a place for it, but most of the time, my car's got 16s on it.
Yeah.
Because Hoosier makes a monster. It's a 12.5 by 31.
Oh, wow.
That's what's on the back of the 54.
Yeah.
And
I've got Hoosiers
they're
on.
high boy tires, basically.
Yeah, I've got Hoosiers on the back of my 55 truck. I had 1612 ET3s made, and it's got a 16, 29, 16, 50, 16. And the only reason why I wanted a 31, but Hoosier was selling these things to get rid of them, and I got them for $80 a tire, and I bought 4 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not the height I want, but it's a step side truck, and I could just bury it on the ground. You won't see it as much.
Well, I was going to say, if you get too tall, you got up into your bed.
Yeah. Our rear wheels are very, very similar. I freaking dig that wheel, man. It looks
Oh,
so
yeah,
good.
I know.
It looks so good on your car.
Yeah, they're cool wheels. Unfortunately, there are only so many wheel choices that I care about, and there aren't really enough.
Yeah.
Now, on my
Oh, yeah.
tin Woody, I'm actually going to have 17s and 18s.
But you're doing Convo Pros, right?
Right. But we haven't gotten to the wheels yet. My tire,
Oh, man.
but and then the wheels that I made for the 55, and this is so disheartening, because the wheels that I made for the 55, do you remember monocoque wheels?
Oh, yeah.
Which they're still in business, I think. But anyway, monocoque wheels were flat. They were a super trick, but they were flat. If they move your wheels inboard another inch. And so I liked the idea of moving the wheels inboard, and so I called His name's Dave. It was Monocoque, and super nice guy. Again, 30 years ago, and he sold me wheel halves, and so I ended up with, they were 15 by 16 inch rears, and 15 by 4s, but the outer was flat. And he also sold them to me with no center holes. So I had my front halves machined to where just the dust cover stuck out. And then the back, I didn't have any center hole.
Oh, wow.
The original back wheels of the 55 had no center hole. But anyway, so I had motor wheel fly holes, a program written that would cut, those holes. And I had all those wheels machined, and we welded the halves together. Well, I broke them all. And come to find out later that I could have gotten thicker wheel halves. He sold me the drag race wheel halves that are super thin.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could buy different thicknesses.
Oh, jeez.
So that might have helped.
Yeah. Those wheels could have still been on the car.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because it had a whole different look with the original, fly look.
Right.
On it. Yeah, it had a really cool look to it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love to have you back on. Like, we should plan this for after Columbus, if you're available.
Yeah, the stories you'll be able to tell.
Yeah, that's Dave Lane and I were talking about. If nothing else, there'll be people talking.
I think they're going to be talking for all the right reasons, too.
Yeah, I do too. And it's funny, there's nothing on that car that isn't modified except for one thing. The freaking door panels are factory 54. I mean, they're upholstered, but factory 54 in design. Nothing's moved, nothing's changed. You can't beat perfection. Those suckers are cool as can be. But I mean, the door handles, everything on the car is messed with.
I would really, though, I would love to have you back on because there's so many things I want to pick your brain on.
Sure.
We didn't even get into the art, the design stuff, and all that.
So just
Thanks, Scott, very much,
Scott,
man.
thank you.
No problem. Hope I
been
didn't
a lot
talk
of fun.
your ear off.
No, it was great.
No, I've got another ear waiting. And if that goes, I've got 3 more sitting on standby.
Yeah,
Grow another one.
We'll do episodes 3 and 4 after Columbus.
I'm growing another one in the lab right now.
Hey, Scott, thank you again, man.
Yeah.
No problem. This is fun, you guys.
Yeah.
Man, you have a great night, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And thank you again.
No problem.
Right on.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks again to our guest, and thank you for listening. As always, I'm Brian.
I'm still Brad.
I'm Alex.
I'm Eric.
And we'll catch you next time. Thanks again. Thanks again for listening, and be sure to keep up with us Gearheads over on our website at www.round6pod.com. And if you'd like to, we invite you to follow along with us over on Facebook, Instagram, and be sure to check out all of our latest videos on youtube.com.